Well, the vast majority of medical experts insist that vaccines are generally safe and that there is no link between vaccines and autism, and that is widely accepted, but not universally. President Trump has expressed interest in investigating the matter further, vaccine safety. If he does, he has at least one supporter from a prominent Democratic family. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. met earlier this year with the president to discuss the possibility of forming a commission to investigate the safety of vaccines. We spoke to him about that topic recently. Watch. So this is such a taboo subject that I think a lot of people would hesitate even to bring it up. But I've read a lot that you've written on it. I don't agree with all of it, but I don't think you're crazy. You're not anti-vaccine. You say you vaccinate your own children, but you have concerns. Tell me first what the reaction is when you tell people you're skeptical of the vaccine regimen in the United States.
Well, like you said, I'm pro-vaccine. I've never said anything anti-vaccine, but I've read the science, and the science is very clear that some of the vaccines, and what you have to understand is that the vaccine regimen changed dramatically around 1989. The reason it changed, Tucker, is that Congress, drowning in pharmaceutical industry money, did something they've never done for any other industry. They gave blanket legal immunity to all the vaccine companies so that no matter how sloppy the line protocol calls, no matter how absent the quality control, no matter how toxic the ingredient or egregious injury to your child, you cannot sue them. So there's no depositions, there's no discovery, there's no class action suits. All of a sudden, vaccines became enormously profitable.
From that point, from '89 when the law passed?
And in '87, it was implemented, and then there was a gold rush by the pharmaceutical industry to add new vaccines to the schedule. So I got 3 vaccines, and I was fully compliant. I'm 63 years old. My children got 69 doses of 16 vaccines to be compliant. And a lot of these vaccines aren't even for communicable, casually communicable diseases like hepatitis B, which comes from unprotected sex, or, sharing needles. Why do we give that to a child the first day of their life? And it was loaded with mercury.
And we do give that to children.
We continue to give it to them. The mercury has been taken out of 3 vaccines in this country, but it remains in the flu vaccine, 48 million flu vaccines, and it's in vaccines all over the world. And it is the most potent neurotoxin known to man that is not radioactive. How can we inject that into a child? If you take that vaccine vial and break it, you have to dispose of that as hazardous waste. You have to evacuate the building. Why would we take that substance and inject it into a little baby?
Argument, as you know, is that group immunity, herd immunity is what you're searching for. And yes, there are downsides, but in the big picture, everybody
immunity is, when they talk about herd immunity, they're talking about casually contagious diseases like measles.
Right.
Last month, a group of very prestigious scientists with a robust study of African children studied the DBT, diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus vaccine.
Yeah.
Which is the most widely distributed vaccine in the world. Virtually every kid in Africa gets it. What they found, they did a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study, which has never been done. And what they found was that the kids who did not get the vaccine, the kids who got the vaccine, the little babies, were 10 times as likely to die in the next 2 months as the kids who did not. And what they concluded was, and this study was funded by the Danish government, and again, these people are very bulletproof scientists, they said that that vaccine is killing more people than diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis combined. So we need to do those cost-benefit analyses on every vaccine.
So why, and this is a final question, but why has the point that you're making, that doesn't seem crazy, been so discredited? Could it be because the spokesmen for that point of view tend to be actresses from Hollywood or actors who don't seem to know much about the topic and are against all vaccinations? That has...
I think that cohort is out there, but it's very, very small. And I think, I'm called anti-vax all the time because the pharmaceutical industry is so powerful, both with the media. They give $5.4 billion a year to the media. And they've gotten rid of the lawyers, so there's no legal interest in those cases. And they really have been able to control the debate and silence people like me. And I'm very grateful to you for having the courage to allow me on the show and talk. This is the second show in 10 years that's allowed me to talk about this, the other one being Bill Maher, which doesn't take advertising.
I just think it's interesting. And above all, I think you ought to be allowed to ask legitimate questions without being attacked, because I think that's the basis of democracy.
I mean, we ought to be having a responsible debate, and, you know, a debate that doesn't scare people.
Right.
But a debate that's real and it's based on science.
Well, I hope you start one. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Tucker, I wanted to ask you about your how you decide on your stories, because last night I watched the show, and I thought it was great that you had a big segment about vaccines, because that wasn't necessarily top of the news, but it is something that you're interested in. How do you come up with your decision for what you want to talk about each night?
I respond to my email. That's a big part of it. But a lot of people email or text. I know a lot of people just, I'm old. Had a lot of work done, but I'm older than I look, and
that's for sure.
People text me, and I've known Bobby Kennedy. I don't agree with his politics, but I think he's smart, and I think he's a brave guy who asks questions that are unpopular. I don't know what I think of vaccines. I vaccinated my kids. I mean, I'm for vaccines, but I also think it's legitimate to ask questions that nobody is. There are a lot of people who try to bully you into not asking those questions, and I just don't like that. I don't like people. It's a red flag for me when people say you're not allowed to ask that question, no matter what it's about. I think you ought to be allowed to ask legitimate, respectful questions, and you ought to press for an answer. That's not threatening to me, and people who are threatened by that are usually trying to hide something. It's usually people in power, and I think it's fair to make them answer the question, and that's all he was doing.
Okay,
and good for him.